So today I decided to take a break from talking about some, really deep business stuff and cannabis industry stuff and tell a little bit more of my own story. And really the purpose of this is to discuss the factor of fear in preventing people from making major changes in their life. And sort of the way that I've approached this, which isn't going to work for everybody, but ultimately, I want to talk about not being afraid to make a complete change in your life, to try something completely different that you've never tried before, to not find yourself stuck in a rut from something that maybe you've just overcommitted yourself to. I know, from personal experience, a lot of different versions of this problem where either somebody has worked a particular career or studied something in college and got their degree in it, and 5-10 years down the road, they continue to do it merely because they've been doing it, not necessarily because they want to do it. In fact, oftentimes you might find these people have, entirely different wants and desires from the career path that they ended up going down. This can all be, part of the family. Like, you're the son of or daughter of a doctor, and so therefore you must also go to medical school. There's certainly lots of family pressure that sends people down a particular path. For me, my path was completely disjointed from everyone in my family, and also disjointed from the idea of a career path, which was that I studied acting in high school and college. And so I've been pretty much an artist most of my life. I love painting and drawing and music especially. But when I discovered acting, it was something that it wasn't like I just studied it and, my major was acting. It was one of those things where being in front of hundreds of people and being able to make them feel something gave me a feeling that, as good as I am with words, I literally cannot translate to you. Recharges my batteries in ways that no other activity, hobby, career, success, milestone, nothing can do for me what standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people and making them feel something can do for me. And so that's why I really was into acting, and that's why I still consider myself an actor, even though I haven't acted in almost 10 years. And the reason why is because, well, it's a complicated thing. I mean, when you know the thing that really fills you inside and fulfills you, that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be your job, but it does mean that that's something that defines you. And early on after I left college, I thought, initially I was just going to continue to audition for roles and play the game that most actors have to play, which usually involves a certain level of financial struggle, if not an abysmal level of financial struggle. And that wasn't enough to deter me from wanting to do it. I knew that going into it. However, I happened to think of another path that I wanted to take. Maybe it seemed like the easier path at the time, which was if I made my own productions, my own content, I could act within it and not have to appeal to, a board of people listening to me do a monologue and deciding whether or not that was relevant to cast me in a role, or if I didn't have the right connections. I learned about the politics in casting really early on in college, and I knew it was going to exist even more heavily in Hollywood or New York, and it just seemed to make more sense to my sensibility to do it the DIY approach. So when my brother was going to school in Pennsylvania, we went up there and made a movie together, and cast ourselves in the movie, but also wrote, produced, did the props for, special effects, edited, shot, directed. Every aspect of the film we had our hands in, and that was also the case with Stephanie and our partner at the time, Jay. And what we realized through the course of making this film was making a film is starting a business. It's the exact same process, different results and different product. And so we thought, this is something we do well. Like, let's continue to follow this path, which was very different from the path that I had trained for and prepared for all through high school and college, which was the audition and petition to hope that someone will cast you into something enough times that you get that momentum that finally you become a star. For me, the path seemed a little different at this point, and it was, wow, we actually know how to make our own stuff. So maybe let's continue making our own stuff and follow that way. So we created a company to be a film production company, initially with the intent to cast ourselves in our own film productions and our own art. And so we created that company, Makeshift Productions, and we moved it to Austin because of the Third Coast sort of reputation of Austin. And very quickly decided that if we could take this talent that we have for making film production and put it into commercial video production and work with clients and make enough money through building advertisement content or any other sort of video content for these companies, that we would be able to fund our own films, which is actually kind of a delusion that a lot of film students generally have coming out of school, which is that if you just get enough business over here, you can fund your creative endeavor over here without having to get it invested in. And almost everyone will realize the minute you choose that, you're basically just going to be overwhelmed with commercial work. So if you're doing well. So that's pretty much how we ended up with Makeshift Productions 5 years later being, a multimedia design firm, because as we kind of started going down this path, the path led to some success over here in the commercial video space. It didn't mean that I was giving up on myself by having followed that path. It just meant that an opportunity presented itself, and we just decided that we had the wherewithal to follow that opportunity and see where it went. And in so doing, I was working for 5 years with Makeshift Productions and helping clients to understand, what to do with these video assets after we create them. And lo and behold, about 80% of my time was spent helping people create marketing strategies for the content I had just created for them. I would give them a video and they would be like, what do I do with it? Do I put it on YouTube? What's YouTube? I don't even understand what Facebook is yet. So I was spending most of my time building their marketing strategies. Now keep in mind, I don't have a background in marketing. I never went to school for it. And for the most part, had never worked in a marketing role other than the own stuff I was doing myself. So this was something that, however, I seem to have a particular intuition for. The very basis to marketing and sales is storytelling, in my opinion. And if you tell a story effectively, the product itself doesn't ultimately really matter. You can talk to old school sales guns and all they'll tell you all day long is, give me any product, I don't care what the product is, just tell me what I'm talking about, and rather that being a set of features and details, for me, it's about telling the story. If you're going to do business with another company, if you're going to buy a product that you really want to care about, it's going to be about, the story behind that product. Why do people wear Toms? It's not because Tom's shoes are like fashionably amazing. They're actually really quite hideous if you consider most shoe fashion. However, I have a pair of Toms because of the story, right? So, and that is a real deep conversation that I'll go on my own, on its own video later on. But the point was, is I found that like my inner storyteller from theater, from acting, found its way into a place that could really help businesses understand better how to tell their stories. And that was me helping build their marketing strategy. I happen to also have a little bit of a weird sort of analytical mind. And so understanding the background behind the technology of Facebook and Google and YouTube and all of this really helped to put together an actual tactically successful strategy. But at the core, again, it was really more about the storytelling. At this point, started a totally new path. We created a marketing and advertising agency, Speak Social, out of this sort of opportunity flow that was happening. So, and thanks for the compliment, Kyle. I started with acting. I found myself storytelling in a commercial space and then helping these people try to figure out what to do with it. And I was like, well, seems like I'm pretty good at helping them figure that out too. And they seem to, really be responding well to that need. So maybe I should follow that right now and not continue to build the biggest multimedia design company in the world, which was never my intention anyway. So made a shift. We created Speak Social. And for 6 years have been running, experiments on how to make the best possible marketing strategy and tactics work. And, again, I'm not an advertiser. I did not go to advertising school. I have not worked for a big ad agency. And in fact, one of the impetus reasons why we started Speak Social was because we were looking at other ad agencies and marketing agencies, the big ones in the space, and being like, they're full of shit. Everything that they're doing is on a rinse and repeat model. Let's just charge our clients. Let's not hold ourselves accountable. Let's not track our work. And we were like, no. If we're going to get into this, we're going to do it right. We're going to track everything. We're going to be accountable to everything. We're going to make sure that we're not wasting any of our clients' money like everyone else is doing out here in the advertising and marketing world. And if we could do that and make it successful, what if we could actually start to steer some of that money towards good causes, like getting them to contribute to a nonprofit and make that part of the storytelling? So that was actually why we got into, the sort of the heart of the agency, but it wasn't ever to build the biggest agency in the world. About 5 years into this process, and this is after a ton of other experiences that I'll touch on here in a second, but about 5 years into this process, I realized that this wasn't me actually living out a dream. I had just been chasing an opportunity for a few years. I was at a point where it was either keep digging in and keep building an agency, which I had no real dream to do, or maybe possibly find a way to leverage all the stuff that I've done to this point into something new. And so, I had also made an agreement with my wife that we would chase one dream at a time. The first dream apparently was Makeshift Productions and Speak Social. And, after about 10 or 11 years of chasing that dream, we needed to have a change so that she could chase her dream of being a novelist. And this was a difficult realization to come to. We had been talking about it for almost 3 years, actually, kind of kicking the can down the road. The company got an acquisition offer, then it got another acquisition offer, but those things sort of fizzled out or took too long to actually come to fruition. And so at about year 8, we started having this conversation. By year 11, it was the right time to let her be the novelist that she knows she wants to be. And so we had this very, intimate personal discussion about this. We decided it was time for me to possibly find a full-time position somewhere where I could make enough money to support the both of us and she could be a full-time novelist. And that was a very, very hard decision to make as a business owner. For the longest time, I battled internally with a lot of mental and emotional head trash. And this is the kind of stuff that I think most of us struggle with when it comes to trying to pick a different path, or especially as entrepreneurs, if we get to the point where we're like, maybe we need to be doing something else, we feel like we're abandoning or giving up on the struggle that we've been in for so long. And I dealt with that for a couple years. I went and saw a therapist to even help me really start to work through some of this stuff, because there was so much emotion built up in the starting of my business. We had so many partners and emotions and relationship tensions and bad decisions and lots of financial ruin. And all of this culminates into a point where you're like, I can't walk away from this. I'm a failure if I walk away from this. My company hasn't been bought. My company is not super successful. I'm not Fortune 500. I'm not Fortune 1000. I'm a failure. That's not the case at all. And it took me a while to get to that realization. But when I finally did, I start talking with a mentor of mine, and I say, okay, look, I'm not exactly sure what I can offer for a company. I know what I want to do essentially and what I can do, but I don't really know where to look. I want to just work for a good company. Like, how do I just find a good company to work for? And he's like, look, make it easy on yourself. Just pick 1 or 2 industries to focus on, and then look for opportunities in those industries. And if the opportunities don't exist, then shift your focus. But narrow it down and start with what you really care about. And I was like, well, that's really easy. It's cannabis. I want to get involved in the cannabis industry. And he was like, well, that's interesting. Why? Most people have to think about that. Why the cannabis industry? And I was like, well, I mean, a few things interest me about it. There's the social movement behind it, the fact that I've been a consumer for 9 years or so at this point, but also there's so few opportunities that one gets in their lifetime to get involved in an industry that's starting literally from scratch, not being built on another industry. Like the mobile phones are not a new industry; they were just built on existing industries within normal phone technology. And so that opportunity was interesting to me. And within a week after that conversation, I had already been flown up to Denver to interview with the Cannabist, and 2 weeks later moved to Denver to take that role. And that was super freaking scary, man. I can't tell you how weird it was for me to be the CEO of a startup and to have a team and to realize it's time to move on without an end having been achieved, without like a mark in the sand that said this is where it stopped. This is what we were building this towards. We got there. Time to move on to the next project. But it was an actual transition that needed to occur, and it wasn't devastating. It was empowering. Now, again, it's so scary to go from one path to the next. In any point, it's scary to even think about the fact that I started off in school and spent so much of my life investing in acting, and then to not have acted in 10 years, I know a lot of people, myself included, who would struggle with that just based on the fact that, like, how can I even call myself an actor if I'm not acting? How am I not getting myself out there and spending my own personal time doing this? You know, the fear of judgment from my fellow actors who are busting their ass out there, acting in tons of stuff. You know, the excuses one makes for oneself when you say, I'm just too busy, I've got too much business going on, you know, I'm not going to be able to get out onto stage right now because I've got way too much shit going on, I'm too busy. But like at the same time, I've got a friend who has 2 children, works a full-time job, and acts in damn near every single production that he can possibly line up without fail. I don't think the guy's not acting. I have other friends, my friend Val, my friend Michael, you know, so many people, I'm sorry I can't name you all, so many people who are out there hustling their asses off in New York and LA and Chicago while also holding full-time jobs. So, you know, there's a lot of excuses one can make for oneself to not be who they're supposed to be. And ultimately, all I'm saying is that you should not be afraid to make a complete change in your life. Because I remember at one point when Steph and I were at a particular point of financial ruin in our lives, we thought we were going to lose our house and everything else. Literally everything was on the table for the government to come take. And I was losing my shit. I was literally miserable. I wasn't smiling. It was the most frightening time of my life. And somehow Steph mustered some sort of like Zen Buddhist wisdom or courage, and just looked at me and she's like, babe, no matter what happens, they can't take me and they can't take Duncan. So everything else is bullshit. I mean, we can find a new place to live. We can find a new car to drive. We can, you know, get groceries how we need to get groceries. But ultimately, they can't take me and they can't take the dog. So there's nothing really to be afraid of. And as simple as that sounds, like I can't even tell you how profound that was to hear and to discuss with her. It was empowering, absolutely. And it helped me to realize that, like, whether I'm an entrepreneur and then going to take a job, or whether I have a job and I'm going to start a business, and even if I don't have all the investment lined up, I need to do what I need to do. Even if I don't have all the people in the acting world loving me and casting me in every play, even though I'm not acting at all and all of my friends are, none of that matters. That's all trash. That's head trash. It's emotional trash. It's limiting beliefs that we use to make ourselves afraid to try something different and afraid to do something new. And you can try it, and then you could fail at it, and then you can go back to doing what you're doing again. When I took the job at the Cannabist, I certainly expected to be there longer than 9 months. And to be moving to a whole new city. I mean, I had just invested 11 years in Austin, keep in mind. So 11 years of networking value, of friends, of spheres of influence, of all of this pathway for Speak Social, and all of this like reputation that I had to deal with there in Austin. And then I just like left the startup, took a job, went to Denver, and started into a whole new industry where I knew nobody. That was scary as hell. 9 months later, to be finding myself without that position was even scarier. However, like I said, don't be too afraid of this, because I went back to what I was doing right before, which was helping people with marketing and sales strategies, consulting with Speak Social. Speak Social still exists, and luckily my partner Stephanie and Andy have continued to do amazing work for clients and keep the agency moving forward and building. So I had something to land onto, but you know, it was scary as hell for me. Always, every single one of these steps is scary as hell for me. So, you know, don't let fear be the reason you don't do this. It's always going to be scary. Parents always tell me there's never a point where you're going to be ready for kids. You're just going to have them, and then you'll deal with it. And every single one of them says that. And so, you know, I kind of think there's a universal rule here, which is that we can always prevent ourselves from doing something with fear. It's easy to do that. But if you're not afraid of the ultimate disaster that could possibly ensue, then there's nothing really, I mean, let me rephrase that. you will think there's an ultimate disaster that's going to ensue. Ultimately, it's a boogeyman. There's nothing there to be afraid of. And even if you go into something and find that the whole thing was a bad idea, a total failure, you do have the wherewithal to do something different and go back to what you were doing before. People will always be there to support you if you've got a good support network, and if you, even within your friends and family, like there are ways you can always find a fallback plan. Don't be afraid of trying something without a plan B. Just go for it. You know, plan as best as you can, but you're never going to be financially ready to own a startup. You're never going to be financially ready to leave a startup to go to a job. You're never going to be financially ready to lose a job. You're never going to be financially ready to have kids. You're never going to be financially ready to chase your dreams. Nobody is ever going to come down and grant you the opportunities. Like, you just have to kind of follow them. Now, that doesn't mean that that's for everybody. Some people do very well working at a job for 35 years. I mean, my father-in-law has worked at Unisys since he left college, and he has continued to kick ass at that position. He's one of the original guys who put the coding into your computer so that when you press a button on a keyboard, it shows up as a letter on the screen. Like, he's been in it for a long time, and that works for people. And I'm by no means saying don't do that. You can still try new stuff in your personal life, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your career. So I don't mean this for everybody, but I do mean this for those of you who are thinking ever about trying something that you're not doing yet. About if you ever have the thought, I can't do that because I've been doing this already. If you think that there's an idea, a hobby, or something that you want to really get started, but you're afraid of the ridicule of your colleagues because either this isn't anything close to what your degree was in, or because you're not holding true to yourself, whoever yourself is. If you think of yourself only as your past self, those things are going to always prevent you from trying to do new stuff. But if you're having those thoughts, hopefully this video will give you some sort of motivation to just go for it. Because, if I had ever let fear stop me in any of these moments, man, I don't even know where I'd be right now. I would be miserable. I'll leave you with this thought, which is that success is about happiness. It's not about any of the other bullshit benchmarks and milestones and goals that we're told success means. I remember talking with a guy who's a business consultant friend of mine, and he was working with a dude who was the CEO of a Fortune 500, I believe. The guy was making 600,000+ a year, and had the house, the car, the wife, all of the check boxes filled with what made someone successful. And was talking with John, my friend, and breaking down crying because he was miserable, too much stress, did not know what the hell he was going to do. John asks him, well, if you could write a blank check for yourself, you know what I mean? Just what you wanted to do in life. If you could start everything over and just put it on a whiteboard and then that would come true, what would it be? And he'd be like, honestly, I'd have a trailer in New Mexico and I'd be gardening and I'd be making my own vegetables and maybe selling them at a farmer's market. And he goes, okay, what's stopping you? I'm the CEO of a big company. I've been the CEO of this company for 10 years. I make $600,000 a year. I have a house. I can't just give it all up. John says, why not? Why can't you just give it all up? So the guy did. He listened to him. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision. A year later, John checks in with him. He's making 20-something thousand a year in a trailer in New Mexico growing vegetables and is fucking happy as he could possibly be. Every motivating coach probably has one of these stories. In fact, this story could be total bullshit. I don't know. I never met the guy. I never went to New Mexico. I never bought his vegetables. But I do know that I've seen this happen time and time again. There was a very true story of a Silicon Valley CEO who was making millions, who literally walked out of his house barefoot into the woods and never came back. Just stays in the woods. He makes stuff out of wood that he then goes into the city to trade for other things like leather, which he makes into other things. And this is a true story. I don't know the guy's name. I'll try to figure it out for you and throw it in the comments. But it's time and time again we have to relearn these lessons, and that is that happiness is not ever going to be derived from a position of power or from money or from career path or from cars and houses and blah blah blah. It's only ever going to be about you doing what you really want to do and being true to yourself. And if you're caging up inside you these thoughts or these aspirations of things you want to do just because you're afraid of what it means to do them, or you're afraid that you don't have enough money to do it, or you're afraid that you've been going too far down a career path to do it, or you're afraid of the judgment of your friends and family, you're going to poison yourself. And I don't know really what that means. I just mean emotionally, mentally, you won't be as healthy as you need to be. So give yourself the room to do something scary and try something new and completely divert your life. Move somewhere completely different. Try a total different career path, a total different industry. Because fuck it, man, you only live this one time. We only have one life. If we live to 100 years old, if we're lucky, that's still only 100 years. I mean, and in that 100 years, what's 2 to 5 years of an experiment? You know, try something new. I've done it a number of times. I can't say I'm super successful, but I'm happy. So in my opinion, I'm succeeding like a motherfucker. So hope that's helpful. Jake, go play Magic the Gathering. I am both an astronaut and wearing a scarf at the same time, as Jake said. So I will see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching.